Well, aloha there, and we are back to Julian calendar. Let's go back to where we left off. So, after skimming through all this, still having to skim more. I mean, Jesus Christ. There's the month names when it comes to Roman, Charlemagne, Eastern European, year numbering. Yeah, we haven't gone through there. So I figured let me just go to, well, the leap year era. I already read through part of this, but hmm, I'll go more detail. I mean, a bunch of people throughout the years keep on talking about how there's always issues with this calendar and that they should always find a way to modify it, not necessarily change it entirely, but just to consider ways to mitigate it. Which, I mean, seeing a bunch of people just pointing out, like, was it Marco Buzz talking about it, pointing out a bunch of listings. Some people have a different ideas on how to. Oh, pardon me. Some people have had different ideas as to how the leap years went. The above scheme is that of Scaliger, 1583, in the table below. He established the Augustan reform was instituted in 8 BC. The table below shows for each reconstruction the implied proleptic Julian date for the first day of Caesar's reform calendar and the first Julian date on which the Roman calendar date matches the Julian calendar after the completion of Augustus' reform. Scholar date. The BC of the first Julian day, aligned day, and the leap years resumed. Pretty much you have all of this. Okay, when it comes to BC 1883. Okay, yeah, this is a lot to follow through, especially since I just skimmed through how the leap year system worked because it was every 3 to 4 years they would have to implement it versus like Gregorian when it comes to like what is it, some hundreds of years. And even then, it's not much of a big factor. And even then, when it comes to the modern calendar versus Julian calendar, the Julian calendar is behind several days. Like, what is it? I remember, like 13 days last time. By the system of Skillinger, Leander, and Brunton, the leap year prior to suspension happened to the BC years that are divisible by 3, just as after the leap year's resumption, there are 80 years divisible by 4. So it varies between these years 3 and 4. And yeah, you just always have to consider it. It was even a calendar that many of the people still were confused of, even though they were less confused than the standard Roman calendar that the Roman Republic used, along with the former kingdoms, and so on and so forth. So it talks about all this. So, what is it? In the end, as the authors of the previous paper pointed out, with the correct 4-year cycle being used in Egypt and the 3-year cycle abolished in Rome, it is unlikely that Augustus would have ordered the 3-year cycle to be introduced in Asia, especially when he started to expand, because one of the big reasons why Julian was preferred was because of it being practical. I mean, that was the case with the ISO, what is it, 8601, um, referring to each being accountable for every date and every place. Months names, the Julian reform did not immediately cause the names of any months to be changed. The old intercalary month was abolished and replaced with a single intercalary day at the same time, i.e., 5 days before the end of February. January continued to be the first month of the year. Now you have Roman. The Romans later renamed months after Julius Caesar and Augustus, renaming Quintus as Lulius, July in 44 BC, and Sextus as Augustus, August in 8th BC. Quintillus was renamed in honor of Caesar because it was the month of the birth, according to The Santas Consultum, quoted by Macrobus Sextus, was renamed to honor Augustus because several of the most significant events in his rise to power, culminating in the fall of Alexandria, occurring in that month. Other months were renamed by other empires, emperors, but apparently none of the later changes survived their deaths. I.e., many things were changed, but what became consistent is the month of July and August for Julius and Augustus, the significant people in the Roman Empire. Yeah, you have a bunch of names that are referring to it. What is it? Abizanas, Invictus, Felix, Pius, Lucius, Illus, Aurelius, Commodus, Augustus, Hercules, Romanus, and Exupertus. I am saying that right probably not, but then again, people don't know Latin, so no harm, no foul. The Emperor Tacitus is said to have ordered that September, the month of the birth and accession, be renamed after him, but the story is doubtful since he did not become emperor before November 275. Similar honorific, instead of honorable, it's honorific month names were implemented in many of the provincial calendars that were aligned to the Julian calendar. You have Charlemagne, much more lasting than the inferior month names of the post-Augustan Roman emperor, where the old High German names were chosen by Charlemagne. Yeah, and then goes with was it Oster month, Onus month, Prussia month. Okay, so pretty much Easter month, Joy month, Follow month, and so on, so along with all these names. Then in Eastern Europe, the calendar month names used in Western and Northern Europe in Byzantine and by the Berbers were derived from the Latin names. However, in Eastern Europe, older seasonal months names are continued to be used in the 19th century, and in some cases are still in use, and many languages include Belarusian, Bulgarian, Croatian, Czech, Finnish, Ugarian, Georgian, Lithuanian, Mrs. Bentadian, Polish, Romanian, Slovenian, and Ukrainian. When the Ottoman Empire adopted the Julian calendar and the reform of Romani calendar, the month names were reflected Ottoman tradition. So there is different names in different places corresponding when it comes to their language, but also when it comes to the culture, especially the Ottoman Empire, where they adopted it, but they could have done the Gregorian calendar. But I guess that when it comes to customs, logistics, maybe it's even when it comes to political matters and them not knowing how to reform it, that they just refer to the Julian. I guess that has to do with the Ottoman Empire role when Constantinople was a thing, when it comes to the Byzantine Empire being a thing, especially when it comes to their records. Now you have year numbering. The principal method used by the Romans to identify a year for dating purposes was to name it after the two consuls who took office in it. I think I got everything here because it just talks so much about this. The year New Year's Day, the Roman calendar began the year on 1st January, and this remained the start of the year after the Julian reform. However, even after local calendars were aligned to the Julian calendar, they started the new year on different dates. The Alexandrian calendar in Egypt started on 29th August, 30th August after the Alexandrian leap year. Several local provincial calendars were aligned to start on the birthday of Augustus, 23 September. The indication caused the Byzantine year, which used the Julian calendar, to begin on 1st September. This date is still used in the Eastern Orthodox Church for the beginning of the liturgical liturgical year when the Julian calendar was adopted in AD 988 by Vladimir Iv of Kiev. The year was numbered Anno Mundi 6496. Beginning on 1st March, 6 months after the start of the Byzantine Anno Mundi year was the same name. And yeah, you pretty much have more things on here, like usual. Oh yeah. In Anglo-Saxon England, the year most commonly began on 25th December, which is approximately the winter solstice, have marked the start of the year in pagan times. Though 25th March, the equinox, is occasionally documented in the 11th century, sometimes the start of the year was reckoned as 24th September, the start of the so-called Western indication introduced by BD, and so on and so forth. Most Western European countries shifted the first day of the numbered year to January 1st while they were still using the Julian calendar before they adopted the Gregorian calendar. Many during the 16th century. The following table shows the years in which various countries adopted 1 January as the start of the year. Eastern European countries with populations showing allegiance to the Orthodox Church. Roman calendar used in the Ottoman Empire. Until 1918 when the empire dissolved. And it shows a whole list of countries that pretty much began with this, took adoption of the new calendar, i.e. the Gregorian calendar, the Roman Empire, Spain. All this until, you had countries that are not necessarily Catholic and rivals with each other adopted it. And one big one was the British Empire, excluding Scotland. Yeah, pretty much, in 1752. Now, knowing the dates, this was around the 7th Years' War. I guess that when it comes to it having imperial ambitions, they would have to align themselves universally to a global system, like the Gregorian calendar, in order to get everything. And you also have the Republic of Venice, which was still its city-state since there was not a united Italy in Europe. And you also have Serbia, which Serbia always eludes me. Is it a ace? You know what? Since I'm almost finished with this, I'll actually go through this country. Oh, I still like my time learning about India and learning about the state of Gujarat and yeah. And yeah, I could definitely go to the countries again. Replacement by the Gregorian calendar. Okay. Alright. The Julian calendar has been replaced as the civil calendar by the Gregorian calendar in all countries which officially used it. Turkey switched for fiscal purposes in 1917. Russia changed on 14th February 1918. Greece made the changes for civil purposes in 1923. Most Christian denominations, the West and areas, I always have issues trying to pronounce this. Evangelized by Western churches have made the change to Gregorian for their liturgical calendars to align with the solar calendar. Alrighty. And then, so on and so forth. What was it? Dual dating was used in documents and gave the date according to both systems. Alright, transitional history. Let me skim through this. Because what is it? I didn't go through any pictures. So I just went to this graph. That's the last thing I can recall. Yeah, there's just not much pictures showing this other than this one. That's why. That is why I should just skim through this and see what's up. and then there's modern usage. But was the transitional history, the Julian calendar was in general use in Europe and Northern Africa until 1582, and until Gregorian calendar came to be. Alright, so there's this. The Gregorian calendar was soon adopted by most Catholic countries, e.g., Spain, Portugal, Poland, most of Italy. Protestant countries followed later, and some countries of Eastern Europe even later. In the British Empire, including the American colonies, Wednesday, 2nd September 1752 was followed by Thursday, 14th September 1752. For 12 years from 1700, Sweden used a modified Julian calendar and adopted a Gregorian calendar in 1753. I guess because of... what was it? Particular reasons. I was going to say the 7 Years' War, but no, this is 1700, so I don't know much history about Sweden. I'll get into that. Since the Julian and Gregorian calendars were long used simultaneously, in some circumstances double dates might be used. Old style OS, new style NS, and Great Britain, Soviet Union, and then later on. So, okay. Let's just talk about the contrast between the Julian and Gregorian transition. You know, there's a few changes, somewhat. Some countries adopting it, some has issues. Russia and the Soviet Union has to do because of it changing to a different country. The Ottoman Empire split many different countries. And yeah, Turkey, it is reforming into its own being and modernizing. So a lot of reasons why this calendar business tends to be messy. Modern usage, Eastern Orthodox. Although most Eastern Orthodox countries, most of them in Southern Eastern Europe, I don't know. Let me skim through this. I know there's a picture here, but yeah, it talks about just a bit. Date of Easter, Syriac Christianity, Oriental Orthodox, and Berbers. So the modern usage really just talks about, yeah, just Eastern Orthodox, and that's it. The revised Julian calendar was endorsed by Synod in Constantinople in May 1923, consisting of solar part, which was and will be identical to the Gregorian calendar into the year 2800, and the lunar part, which calculated Easter astronomically at Jerusalem. The solar part of the revised Julian calendar was accepted by only some Orthodox churches. Those that did not accept with hope for improved dialogue and negotiations with the Western denominations, where the okay, should I read through this? No, it's just a bunch of straight names. The Orthodox churches of Jerusalem, Russia, Serbia, Montenegro, Poland in 2014, and some other continues to use Julian calendar. Thus, they celebrate the nativity of December 25th Julian, which is 7th January Gregorian until 2100. The Russian Orthodox Church has some parishes in the West that celebrate the Nativity on 25th December Gregorian until 2799. Was the parishes of the Orthodox Church in the American Bulgarian diocese? Okay, yeah. Is one of the three ethnic dioceses of the Orthodox Church in America. It was created in 1963 by Eastern Orthodox Christians of Bulgarian and Macedonian descent. Shoot, I didn't know all this. Okay. Yeah, I realize it's possessions, the great blessings of water. Okay. Among Eastern Orthodox and Eastern Rite Catholic Christians, holy water is blessed on the church and given to the faithful to drink at home when needed and to be blessed at their homes. Now, the Eastern Rite Catholic Christians, now, this is quite different when it comes to blessing, because it seems like the person gets to administration themselves. You don't need a person appointed by the Vatican or someone who's qualified for it. Anybody can do it as long as you obtain. Yeah, it's a lot of religious things that I remember studying, but I have a hard time summing it up for y'all. Now, date of Easter. Most branches of the Eastern Orthodox Church use the Julian calendar for calculating the date of Easter, upon which the timing of all other movable feasts depends. Such churches have adopted the revised Julian calendar for the observance of fixed feasts. Wow, such Orthodox churches retain the Julian calendar for all purposes. Not much of a note there. Okay. So Christianity, Oriental Christianity, Orthodox, and Berbers. Yeah, let me just. I'm gonna read all of this in its entirety. Spherical Christianity, the ancient Assyrian Church of the East and East Syriac Rite that is commonly miscategorized under Eastern Orthodox, uses the Julian calendar, where its participants celebrate Christmas on 7th January Gregorian, which is 25th December Julian. The Assyrian Church of the East, the church of split from in 1968, the replacement of traditional Julian calendars with Gregorian calendars being among the reasons. Uses the Gregorian calendar ever since the year of the Schism. The Syriac Orthodox Church uses both Julian calendar and Gregorian calendar based on their regions and traditions they adopted. Now there is Oriental Orthodox. The Oriental Orthodox churches generally use the local calendar of their homelands. However, when calculating the nativity feast, most observed the Julian calendar. This was traditionally for the sake of unity throughout Christendom. In the West, some Oriental Orthodox churches either use the Gregorian calendar or are permitted to observe the nativity according to it. The Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem of Armenian Apostolic Orthodox churches uses Julian calendar, while the rest of the American church uses a Gregorian calendar. Both celebrate the Nativity as part of the Feast of Theophany according to their respective calendar. And there's Berbs. The Julian calendar is still used by Berbers of the Maghreb in the form of the Berber calendar. That's it. That's just the whole thing. Now you have to see also the Byzantine calendar, Julian day, Old New Year, mixed style date. As you can see, they're showing a lot of things related to what was listed in the wiki. A lot of religious, a lot of things related to old past countries like the Byzantine calendar and such. Now the explanatory footnotes. Okay, so actually, yeah, let me skim through these. Okay, well. Okay, so what is it? The second EG, we have a side light on what was involved in the year of confusion, as it was called, according to Dion Koskas, the historian, where the governor of Gaul, who insisted that in the linked year 2 months extra taxes should be paid. Yeah, this is just goddamn confusing. Oh, okay. I think I am done with this. And Jesus Christ, there's just so much things about it. General and cited references. Okay. And external links. Okay, so this is just the with those citations along with the explanatory footnotes. Okay, so damn, they have a lot of credit under here. But yeah. Going under all these, I still don't know much about the Julian calendar besides it's still meaning. I guess that it's like trying to understand how people would follow these times. 'Cause I can't imagine, ancient calendars used by the Babylonians, the Syrians. But seeing how back then a bunch of people would get confused does show that it is even a confusing matter for people who live their life in this system and probably have to rely on it but are not experts full. Because what is it? Even a person who has education tends to get things confused because there can be mishaps, especially in times of war, like for the Roman Empire in the Second Punic. No, it's during the Republic time. The Second Punic War and many of those Roman civil wars from the Republic to the Empire. I think it's also the Kingdom too, but I think for the Kingdom period from Rome, there was not really a Roman identity, but there were a Roman the people that their kingdom later revolved into the Republic, then to an empire. And then later on, they pretty much switched from the West and the East, where the East later became the Byzantines. And what is it? The Byzantines later had relative influence to modern day Russia and other countries, and yeah, it becomes a hodgepodge of all this stuff. I mean, that's also the joke when it comes to Great Britain being related to the Roman Empire, even though half of its culture is a mix of Latin, Roman, and Germanic Celtic traditions. But yeah, I mean, going back to all this, yeah, it's just confusing. Oh yeah, I didn't even get to this picture. I was just so entranced with trying to understand all these calendars and their purposes. The Russian icon of the Theophany, the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist, 6th January, the highest rank feast which occurs on the fixed cycle of the Eastern Orthodox liturgical. The Eastern Orthodox liturgical. Okay, so it's just liturgical. Okay, Eastern Orthodox liturgical calendar describes and indicates the rhythm of the life of the Eastern Orthodox Church. I think I'm starting to realize that this Julian calendar also has a lot of religious things related to it, especially with understanding how it is morally used, depending on what part of the world you are. But I guess that's the case with some Asian, African, no, probably even American calendars. But I think for the American, I wouldn't say they followed any pre-established records. I mean, I could be completely wrong because I don't know much of the Aztecs and Incas recording system other than the use of the codex and the strand system that they used to record. I forgot the actual name. What was it? But they're using the kepu and strands of beads that they form a system to record things, which is way different than what we understand is a modern record, and let alone a calendar, like, for the Aztecs, Toltecs, the Mayans, and then later for the Incans, Amazonians, and was it Iranians? And such. Yeah, I'm just going all that. Well, after finishing all that and looking at, reviewing, that's what I think I forgot, reviewing from all these uses, it's like, okay, there's a lot of things going on and such. But next time, I'm going to talk about a country, Serbia. But without further ado, aloha.